Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me. It looks like my microphone is connected, so we should all be good. I hope everyone's doing well. I'm going to start off class today by showing you this. This is Pestilence. She will not leave me alone, aka Pesto. So she may pop in and out of frames today. I don't know why she's being extra lovey-dovey. So, that's my cat. I hope you all are doing well. Today the plan is to wrap up a little bit from last week and then show you what I'm expecting for you of this week. And then in separate, smaller lectures, I'll go over the different chapters just like I did last week. So I didn't get too many questions, comments, concerns about expectations and everything. You should have gotten several course announcements on the homepage. So hopefully those have been really helpful for you. I've been trying to be really detailed so that you know exactly what is going on, what's expected of you. That being said, if, like I've said over and over and over again, if anything pops up, if anything is unclear, please let me know. So it's likely that it's unclear for somebody else as well. And I'd love to be able to go in and change that and then just post a blast saying that I updated something. So let's get started. I should be able to share my screen. I know I'm able to share my screen. All right, so like I said, course homepage, I did your quiz 1 feedback, so all of your quiz grades are updated. Remember, you have 2 tries to take those quizzes. So if you get feedback the first time that you're missing points that are more than the written response that I have to go in and grade, give it another shot. It doesn't hurt because quizzes are 25 points each. That's like a full letter grade if you're not doing well on them. I did a wrap up. Most of you who kind of fell into that category of something went a little awry with my video submission have already emailed me back. So most of those videos are on the playlist. You should be good to go in and do your peer evaluations. People who put the link in the comments, you are my favorite humans ever. And if you could all start doing that, it makes my life so much easier because I don't have to download the entire document. I can just click that link and it takes me straight to your video. So moving forward, if you could do that, that would be great. If you don't, I'm not going to throw a hissy fit. And I'm still working on giving you some feedback for your topics. I'm hoping today, topic feedback and introduction, speech feedback, and grades. All right, so let's go to content and see what we've got going on this week. Okay, I've got your week 2 schedule up. I was hoping to get your week 3 schedule up yesterday as well. Didn't happen. That's okay. I'm gonna work on that today as well. So we're gonna work on your introduction speech peer evaluation. That's one of the activities that you need to do this week for points. You have your chapter 4 reading. You have a chapter 4 discussion post, which I will show you in the chapter 4 lecture as well. You have chapter 7 reading. There is a chapter 7 discussion post. And then for chapter 2 in Osborn, I don't love it. It's about communication apprehension and communication anxiety, which a couple of you have already expressed to me via email that was something that concerned you. I anticipate more of that in your introduction speeches as well. I don't think it helps a ton. I think that the supplemental text that I have for you, which is just a website, publicspeakingproject.org, it's an open source textbook and it's a collaborative textbook. So each chapter was written by, none of this matters to you, but each chapter was written by a different instructor. So there's a lot of overlap. I also don't get to pick my own textbook for this class. So I don't know that I would pick either of these textbooks, but I really don't like chapter 2 for helping with communication anxiety. So skim that one. Don't give it too much thought, but then go over to chapter 11 in publicspeakingproject.org, and it should be, I think, a little bit more helpful. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the main concepts as well that I would really like you to take away. And then associated with that chapter, there's a quick anxiety survey that I'll show you in that video as well. So goals, the chapter 4 is about listening. So we're going to work on the 3 A's of listening: attention, attitude, adjustment. We're going to learn how to evaluate the credibility of a source as a listener specifically, but also as a speaker. That kind of flows directly into chapter 7, which is all about how do I know if I can trust this information that I'm going to be building this speech on. Then we're going to jump into chapter 2/11, being how do I deal with communication anxiety, communication apprehension? What's the difference between those two things, and what kind of coping mechanisms exist? So for this week, you've got this video, which is your week 2 preview. I'm going to do the media monologue extra credit requirements next week. I melded chapter 2 and chapter 11 together in my brain, which came out chapter 12, which is the media monologue activity. But that's actually next week. So I'm going to adjust that, and I'll do that for you next week. So don't worry about that. Anxiety survey, there's already a link in eCourseWare for you. You've got your 2 discussion posts, and then I've got a chapter 4 mini lecture and a chapter 7 mini lecture for you. I'll probably tack my 2 things that I want to tell you about chapter 2 and chapter 11 onto chapter 7, so you don't have to watch a weird 2-minute video. All right, maybe I do it on this one. We'll see how it goes. All right, so that's our schedule for this week. I'll put the lectures here after I'm done recording on this video and the subsequent videos. You've got your peer evaluation for the introduction speech. Here, you're already in your groups. So remember, the groups have specific people. So don't just go pick any 4 or 5 humans, depending on what group you're in. There are specific humans. And I put in the weekly wrap up what to do if somebody is missing a video, because there are a couple people that didn't turn in videos. So don't worry about it as far as your peer evaluation in your group. Obviously, you will not be penalized, but there's only 2. So most of your peer evaluation should be filled out. I have the YouTube speech playlist here. It's also linked in the course or the week 1 wrap up. Chapter 4 discussion posts, chapter 7 discussion posts, and then your mindfulness video goes with the anxiety/apprehension survey. If you have your own mindfulness video, rock on. It's a playlist or a podcast, or you just have been doing it for years and it's in your own brain, that's totally fine too. If you need an example, this is an okay, I don't love it, but it's an okay example. I've used it for a few years now. And then there's your apprehension survey. Optional worksheets. I got an email asking me hey, what do I do with actually a couple emails hey, what do I do with these extra credit reading notes worksheets? Hang on to them for now. I haven't counted. I need to go in and actually count and see how many exist, so that I'm not saying you get 10 points of extra credit for each assignment or each worksheet, and then there are 50 worksheets and you basically don't have to do any of the speeches if you do all of the worksheets, and that would be insane and not something I would be allowed to do. So I'm not sure how many points are available yet. Hang on to them, keep doing them if you want to. This week, the chapter 4 worksheet and the chapter 7 worksheet are super duper helpful with the discussion board posts, that organizing your thoughts while you're reading. And then a lot of the same questions from the worksheet are in the discussion post. So it may be beneficial for you to take a look at those, but again, they're not required. They do have additional questions or topics or whatever that may be helpful for you. And same thing with the chapter 2 worksheet, which I'll go over momentarily. So I think that that's a good preview. So let's jump into chapter 2. Why don't we, or chapter 2/11, you know what I mean? Because this video is already going to be short-ish. So let's just tack it on in there. Let's talk about communication apprehension, communication anxiety. So how do you know if your anxiety stems from just nerves or from communication apprehension? And at this point, normally there are lots of like thoughtful stares up into the distance trying to figure out what the answer is, and my cat is not even watching me do this video, so no one's going to answer, so I'm going to answer for you. The answer is practice. Did you practice? Did you do everything to prepare that you could? If the answer is yes and you are still significantly nervous, it's likely that it's communication apprehension. If you are solidly prepared, just have a little bit of butterflies, it's likely that that's just nerves. Or if you are unprepared and you have butterflies, it's likely that that's nerves. If you have practiced, if you have done everything in your power to do so, and you are still feeling that way, it's likely it's a form of communication apprehension. And what I don't love about this textbook is that it doesn't tell you about the different types of communication apprehension. And all of the research in every field says that it's better to know so that then you can address it. Trying to address something that is either unknown or unnamed is really, really difficult. So I'm going to go over there are 3 different types that are the most common, and I'm going to talk about those real quick. The first is going to be scrutiny fear. And scrutiny fear is just like the word in the name, being you're worried about judgment. It could be judgment from your peers, like your peers are thinking, oh my gosh, they're such an idiot, or oh my gosh, they have no idea what they're talking about, or they're so boring, or whatever negative judgments you are fearing from your audience members. But there's also a second part of that in this class, being scrutiny is my literal job. It is my job to grade you, to judge you, hopefully not unkindly, and tell you how you can improve your public speaking. So there is an inherent element of scrutiny in this course, which can directly impact or initiate that feeling of I'm worried about being scrutinized, I'm worried about being judged. Additionally, there is trait anxiety. Trait anxiety is something where maybe there is a personality trait inherent to you that would make it difficult or challenging for you to give speeches, for you to feel that communication. It doesn't necessarily mean actual like medical anxiety, and that's one of the pieces where we kind of like separate, and I would actually love to do a little bit more research on like the relationship between these types of communication apprehensions and medical anxiety. Obviously mental illness and mental disorders often have physiological components that these would not have. So I think that's probably the main difference, but more research is needed. So trait anxiety would be something like you're shy. It's a personality trait. You've always been kind of soft-spoken or quiet, and that adds to your anxiety, your apprehension when having to step in front of an audience or step in front of a camera. You feel nervous above and beyond, I just didn't prepare for this. Hope it goes well, right? The last one is state anxiety. So trait, T-R-A-I-T, we have state, S-T-A-T-E. State anxiety is going to be based on the situation at hand, and it can change depending on why you're giving the speech, where you're giving the speech, who you're giving the speech to, all of the above. The example that I like to use is I used to help out organizing debate activities my last semester in my master's program. And we had a really cool panel show up and got people from Congress and government officials and student bodies, and a bunch of the instructors all gave extra credit for their students to come. So there were like, I don't know, probably like, I think the room held 200 people, lots of humans. I was totally fine knowing that I was going to be the person introducing everyone, that I would be asking the questions, that I would be like moderating other student questions, until I found out that the newspaper was going to come cover it. And then I started to panic. That is state anxiety. It could be that you have to give a speech at your sibling's wedding and you're totally fine because you feel really comfortable with your family. But if you have to give a presentation at work, other apprehensions come in. You start thinking about maybe scrutiny fear also bleeds in because you can dabble in all of these. You're worried about getting fired if you don't do well, right? All of these apprehensions, all of these anxieties don't have to happen individually. They can kind of overlap a lot as well. But I found that once you can start to pinpoint why you're feeling anxious, why you're feeling apprehensive, we can start to do different techniques to help you overcome that. So in this worksheet, you all, oh, I think we're frozen. Oh, there we go. Okay. In this worksheet, it's likely, normally I would have you put it on the board and everyone would put check marks next to it and we'd be like, oh my gosh, yeah. Everybody thinks that everyone in the class is less anxious than I am, or everyone is worried, many people are worried that the listeners are going to laugh when I make a mistake, or people are worried that my mind will go blank during a speech. I have something kind of similar, but not as extensive in the anxiety survey that I'll show you here in a moment. But next week, I will have all of those results for you and you can kind of see where everyone else in the class is at. And it kind of helps to show that you're not alone in this, which of course you're not alone in this because I'm here to help you, but you also have all of your peers in this class as well. And one of the things that I will say over and over and over again, especially with things like my listeners will laugh at me if I make a mistake, or with scrutiny, fear, judgment, kind of whatever, your audience is not sitting there twirling their evil cartoon mustache, plotting and waiting, laughing maniacally for you to fail. Your audience is not sitting there hoping that you mess up. Like, oh, I hope that she like falls on the way to the podium if it were in person, or if it's the live speech and they're watching, like, I hope that she just forgets everything and gets an F. Your audience wants you to do well. Very often, like I said last in the chapter 1 lecture, the famous Jerry Seinfeld quote, most people would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. That's how a lot of people feel about this class. I am not ignorant to that fact. So they want you to succeed. They are not sitting here waiting for you to fail. And I am not sitting here waiting for you to fail. I want to help support you as much as humanly possible and help you earn the best grade that you can in this class, acquire the most skills that you can in this class, and get you on your way. So thinking about things like that, when you start to think, oh my gosh, my listeners are going to laugh at me, and worry about being scrutinized, can be super helpful. It's also important to, we're freezing a lot today. Hello. Oh, there we are. Okay. It's also important to see if your symptoms are physical or physiological. Physical or psychological. I can read. Physical being things like your heart rate feels like it's going up, or you start sweating a lot, or your mouth goes dry, or your hands start to sweat, get clammy, you start to feel dizzy or faint, which I think some of you were actually standing in your introduction speeches, like go you, but it's okay to be sitting. I'm sitting in my office chair right now. You can probably see it. So some of these things we can account for and we can try to address directly. Some of them I can't do anything directly about. Things like excessive sweating, more deodorant. I don't advocate for antiperspirant because it clogs your armpits and whatnot. I actually had an interesting speech in my health communication class where they have to correct a misconception of health or a myth associated with health. And one of them was that deodorant or antiperspirant doesn't actually cause cancer. It was good. I needed more information still, so I'm still digging about that. But sidebar. So things like excessive sweating can't super help you with that unless you're like reapplying antiperspirant, right? Dry mouth, you should always have some kind of liquid, caffeine, water, protein shake, whatever nearby so that you can wet your whistle, right? If you start to get dry mouth, clammy hands, more difficult for us to deal with. Feeling faint, giving speeches seated, totally fine. Racing heart, controlling breathing can be really helpful for that. Shaking, a little more difficult. So sometimes the physical elements have kind of band-aids that we can put on them until you're done with your speech, like the various liquids nearby for dry mouth. Some of them are a little bit more difficult. But if there's something where you are, let's say shaking is a hard one for me to help with, which obviously shaking is probably associated with racing heart, which can be helped by breathing. But if there is something like shaking or something that is not on this list that is physical when you start to give your speeches that you're encountering, shoot me an email or set up office hours and say, hey, Kirsten, I don't know how to address this. And I'm 100% happy to go through the 67,000 textbooks that I have here and all of the incredible professor resources, additional professors, not like I'm a professor and I have resources. I have professors that I can go ask and say, hey, have you ever had a student who XYZ? Let's figure out a way to support them and address this. So let me know if any of this pops up or if anything off of the list pops up and you're like, hey, I'm not sure, let's work on it. Sometimes, if it's not physical, your symptoms can be psychological. So that could be those like thoughts that are popping through your head, like, I'm going to embarrass myself. I'm not going to be able to finish my speech. My mind is going blank, that kind of stuff. And that is easy to correct with things like mindfulness, things like preparation, and things like cognitive restructuring, which I'm trying to, there we go. So negative messages could be like, I'm going to fail. You can cognitively restructure those messages. So if you're watching this right now, which all of you should be watching it at some point, I urge you to try to think of a negative example, like I'm going to fail the speech, or I'm worried someone's going to laugh at me, or whatever you are worried about, and write that down. And then try to cognitively restructure that message. Like, I've prepared well and I'm going to succeed. So anytime your brain starts to leak in, like, everyone hates you and they want to laugh at you, kind of like the shame wizard if you watch Big Mouth, which, working on sex ed for a living, of course I watch Big Mouth. But if you haven't, it's very hilarious and cute. A little raunchy, but like the shame wizard. Everyone hates you. They all want to watch you fail. When those thoughts start to creep in, you can slap back at it and say, hey, no, I cognitively restructured this. I have prepared well. I'm going to succeed. I have prepared well. I'm going to succeed. And keep repeating that to yourself and trying to fight back against those thoughts. It can be super helpful because now you're focusing on this positive energy rather than this negative energy. One of the activities that normally we'll do is sharing worst case scenarios of speech days and best case scenarios of speech days. Worst case scenarios usually involve your mind going blank, or tripping, or accidentally saying something inappropriate, and a student like drop a bunch of curse words once, which you're not allowed to curse. I think I've definitely cursed already in these lectures. but you want to do it intentionally, not out of accident or not, being related to that. So best case scenario is usually like I get up there, everyone agrees with me, everyone understands what I'm saying, the instructor thinks that my speech is incredible and now wants me to teach the class, that kind of thing. I also think it's really important to consider barriers to your preparation process because, like I've been saying throughout this entire mini lecture, if you are not prepared, you are more likely to feel this way. So, what gets in the way? What acts as a barrier of you being prepared for this speech? Could be things like I procrastinate. I am in my last year of a almost 12-year 3-degree process, and I still procrastinate no matter what I do, all of the TED Talks that I watch about it, all of the different techniques. It's just something that I'm aware of. So I have to know how to plan things out so that I don't let myself procrastinate. That means you can address that barrier, right? Maybe you don't ask questions. So you have a question, you're unclear about an outline or if a source is credible or whatever else, but you don't reach out and ask me. I think most of you will see, I do have, I think, 2 emails in my inbox right now from yesterday, but most of you have seen so far, I respond pretty quickly via email, and hopefully I've been respectful and approachable and kind and helpful. So know that if you don't typically ask questions, maybe you set a reminder in your phone saying, hey, on Mondays at 11 a.m. when Kirsten is sitting in her office chair recording the mini lecture for us, I don't necessarily have to be there, although like I continue to say, y'all are welcome to come watch me do this live, which is why even though I've messed up a few times, because I am not infallible, I don't stop and then try to re-record like I might if it was a different recording, different lecture. But this is totally live. This is the classroom experience from inside my apartment. So at 11, when Kirsten's recording these lectures, I'm gonna send her an email and ask all of my questions for the week. Super easy fix, right? So then you can try to suggest a behavior or a method to combat that barrier to your preparation process. So that's the chapter 2 worksheet, but let me show you so that mindfulness video is just a YouTube video link. Here is the anxiety and apprehension survey. So what you're gonna do is go in, and I hope it shows your version and not my version where I can like edit things. Haha, cool. So you got your name. What is your biggest communication anxiety, biggest communication apprehension? You could say state anxiety in general, just all public speaking classes. I would like you to dig a little deeper and try to figure out why. But you could also say, I'm worried about my mouth going so dry that I can't get words out while I'm speaking. I am worried people are going to laugh at me. I am worried I'm going to fail. Whatever your biggest anxiety is, the big one, if you have a couple, that's okay too. But we're going to compile a table, and I'm going to post that for you guys so you can all see what other people are thinking, feeling in this class as well. But that will be entirely anonymous. So I ask your name just so I know who completes the activity, and I can give you participation points for that. But I'm not going to put you on blast and say like, oh my gosh, Kirsten is super worried that she's going to bring something up and then lose her train of thought and then not be able to come off as the well-seasoned expert that she actually is, which is one of my fears. I asked you to write down cognitive restructuring phrase during my mini lecture. What'd you write down? What is it? What's yours? I would love to know. And then the mindfulness meditation experiment, it doesn't have to be the full, I think 20 minutes that I normally would do in class. We would be sitting all together. I would turn off all the lights. You would get comfortable. we would listen to that video and try to meditate, which is a really great way before speeches to center yourself, clear your thoughts, address any anxieties, and get your mind ready to give the speech. Some people it doesn't work for. That's okay. Some people it's excellent and they really mess with mindfulness. Rock on, continue to do it. Like I said, if you don't have a mindfulness or guided meditation track, I have that link for you. If you have something on your phone already, a Spotify playlist, or you practice yoga a lot, so you can just do it on your own. Whatever works. I want you to try to for at least 5 minutes, because that's about all I can handle. I am not a meditation person, but I know how effective it is. For at least 5 minutes, sit there and try a guided meditation, especially if you haven't done it before. I would urge you to try guided rather than just sitting there on your own trying to meditate. But if you are a seasoned mindfulness or meditation practitioner, go for it on your own. And then just briefly describe your experience. I don't need a huge paragraph or anything, but like, are you like me where I have actual, not that communication apprehension or communication anxiety are not actual anxiety, but I have medical anxiety. And mindfulness is really, really difficult for me. It doesn't work. What does work is things like the last question, what's your favorite song or artist? Music. Music brings your brain out of that fight, flight, or freeze, or flee. I think they added, no, flee is in flight. They added another one. Area of your reptilian brain into a more calm place. So if I'm feeling anxious or apprehensive about a speech or a presentation, I'm probably going to listen to music over trying to meditate. However, you have to find what works for you. So I do ask, what's your favorite song? And hopefully it's on Spotify, because typically at this point in the semester, it's the second week, I will ask the same question to my students, and I will make a class playlist, and I will play that playlist at the beginning of every class, especially on speech days. And I would still like to make that playlist, even though we're doing this online, and share that with you all on Spotify. If you are a Spotify user, I can also, I think if you're not a user, you can still see it. So you could theoretically borrow all of the songs from the playlist and make your own playlist if you use like Apple Music or whatever. I don't know that there are any other, I don't know where else people listen to music. Throw in there where else you listen to music if it's not Spotify or Apple Music. I have no idea. But it can be super helpful, and I would like for you all to be able to use that kind of as a bonding experience too. So throw in there what your favorite song is, because that can help with communication apprehension and anxiety as well. I also asked, what can you do to ease your communication apprehension or anxiety? So what's something that you can do? Is it a preparation issue? Maybe some of those barriers that were on the other worksheet that I told you about. And then what can I do? Is there anything that I can do to help out with any of this? Would it help if you practiced your speech with me before you actually gave it? Especially with the live speech. See, dry mouth. Especially with the live speech, people can get really anxious and really apprehensive. So I'm not going to do it with everyone, but also everyone does not take me up on this. But I'm happy to set up an office hours, set up a time to meet with you via Zoom and listen to you practice and give you some pointers. Every person who has ever done that with me, every single one, has gotten a better grade on the back end than they initially would have. Which makes sense, right? Because you're getting like notes and feedback from me directly before you're actually being graded. So that's maybe something I can do. What else can I do? Maybe it's something that I haven't thought of. So you're going to fill this out, submit it. If you mess up or submit it again, you should be able to edit your responses. If not, you can just submit another one. I think it lets you do multiple. So that is the last week wrap up, this week preview, and chapter 2 video, if I can. I never know how to get back into Zoom once it minimizes stop share. There we go. Okay. So we talked about last week, we talked about this week. We also talked about chapter 2/11 a little bit, some communication apprehension techniques, communication anxiety. So I'm going to hit pause on this and then do a quick recording of chapter 4 and quick recording of chapter 7. See you soon.